Yeah, like it is that thing. It's almost that Roy Keane thing of like, you know, with around the Thierry Henry stuff. Just don't let them ask. Give them the chance to ask the question about it. It was just yeah, sort of mind-boggling. I thought both teams were of similar quality, says this YouTube commenter. Hopefully Ireland improve in the future, but the football style was very attractive to watch. I think it's an early runner for the most measured comment that's ever been put to YouTube. But I do think it it sums things up nicely. And Kieran O'Connor's been in touch as well. We strung more than a few passes together, more than once in a game, and I'm happy. So like there is that bit of a tone about things, isn't there, this morning? And I'm delighted to say that David Meyler at 24 minutes past 8 joins us on the line. Morning to you, David.
Morning, lads.
That sense that we were just mentioning there from that YouTube commenter about that we strung more than a few passes together, more than once in a game, and that they're happy on the basis of that. There is that's the balance this morning. The result hasn't gone our way, but the signs are positive.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of positives to take from the performance. I think after the first, say, opening 15, 20 minutes, I think the lads grew into the game. I think Slovakia started well, knocking the ball around, albeit they weren't creating a lot of chances or getting into dangerous areas, but we certainly grew into the game. And then when we got hold of the ball, we kept it well, we moved it round, and on another night we should have had more goals. It's been the big downfall probably of this group of players, that we've had no one to really stick the ball in the back of the net consistently.
Like, I'm sure there was an element of Mick McCarthy and Martin O'Neill looking at that game last night and thinking that we could have got that done last night. I mean, I guess that what Stephen Kenny is asking for people to do is to be patient with his style as he, like, fairly significantly changes the culture of the footballing culture of a nation, really.
Yeah, well, that's it. Look, obviously Stephen wants to, play this possession-based game and start playing with a high press, going after teams. Of course, the two managers that you've mentioned have probably been accused of not doing or having that philosophy with games with Ireland. But whether or not they would have said we would have got the result or not, that's irrelevant, because at this moment in time, Stephen Kenny's in charge. So we have to get behind him and support him, in the sense that I thought the performance was very good. All the way through to the end of extra time, we created chances, but I think it was more the manner in which we played in. Lads were getting on the ball, they were keeping the ball, they were knocking it around, in the sense that we were able to sustain attacks after attacks. And when we got into the final third, into Slovakia's defence, we were moving the ball well, but it was like a lot of taking the right options, good movement, which was really positive. But it comes down to, we just got to find a way to get the ball in the back of the net. When you look back, Alan Browne had a couple of great chances. It's hard just to say like, oh, he's got to score. Like, the one that stands out glaring is Conor Howard's chance. It's almost he doesn't expect the player to be on the line. But look, there's a lot of really good stuff that was in that game. We kept the ball, we moved it well, and we created a lot of chances. And not half chances. We were, creating chances. If you look at the first one Alan Browne has, where he, strikes it up high, keeper saves it. Connor's chance, even the ball from Matt Doherty in the first half, where it falls to James McLean, who probably, slashes at it, where he should probably be more composed, someone of his experience and someone who scored big goals internationally. But there was plenty of chances created that on another day we probably, I've seen a lot of people saying we could have scored 3-4 goals, but even just to get that one goal would have been huge.
So we were coming, like the first half particularly, to take that, David, right? We were coming up against 2 banks of 4, and like it was very difficult for us to break that down. It was easy to get into that kind of territory, but then when we hit that, we were suddenly hitting a bit of a roadblock. What's the solution to getting around that? Like, is it to do with the system? Is it to do with that, we just don't have that creative flair in that area of the pitch? But we could easily get there, and it was just very difficult, like you said yourself, to try and get the shots away, get something on target here.
Well, the first thing you look at, right, is Stephen's coming in, he wants to play this possession-based football. So when you want to play this at times, right, you don't want to be the man who loses the ball. Once we were getting into the final third, we're knocking the ball around well, but then it kind of becomes a point where who's the one that's going to be, who's going to be the one that's going to take on the challenge of trying to, thread an eye of the needle, pass through, players. At times, yes, there was suspects. Even when I was watching the game, I'm shouting, put him through. But it's kind of finding the right balance of keeping the ball. Like, we've probably been suspect in the, in the games I've played and the teams I've played in, that when we get into the final third, we're so quick to, put the balls into the box, that yesterday, they were keeping the ball in the final third. They were just trying to pin them right back. But eventually you have to get balls into areas to create chances. I think, like, I watched it on Sky where Mick McCarthy, he kept highlighting, the crosses. When we did get into those areas and we crossed the ball in, we caused them all sorts of danger because we were creating chances, but not only we were getting corners, we were able to sustain attacks. It's a case of when we get that right, like that eye of the needle pass or playing those intricate 1-2s you looked at, in extra time when Callum O'Dowd and Robbie Brady link up. That's excellent play where Robbie lays him in and Callum picks out Alan Browne. Stuff like that. We need to, encourage more of that kind of stuff.
I wasn't watching it on Sky myself, so I haven't heard those Mick McCarthy comments, but he was making the same points in the opening Nations League game against Bulgaria, that Ireland need to cross the ball more. And I wonder if that's actually the case, David, because sure, it might have created a few half opportunities a little bit sooner in the game, but by working the opportunity in the second half, the quality of the opportunity created was completely different to what you might get from a head on the end of a cross, like the Harahan chance, the Browne chance. They're extremely high quality opportunities where you should be scoring from, whereas crossing the ball is a little bit more hit and hope in comparison to that.
No, of course. But I think if you look at it, right, if you're getting into the wide areas and you're crossing balls constantly, what's the first thing an opposition, centre-back is going to say, who's having to defend these crosses? They're going to say to their fullbacks, get out and stop the cross. Once they then obviously make that movement where they're getting out into wide areas to stop crosses, that's when spaces and gaps appear for the likes of Jeff Hendrick, Conor Howlin and those, Alan Browne, to break forward into those spaces, get into the box. So at times, when you hear Mick say, keep crossing it or whatever, it's more, for me, it's more a case of, can we get their fullbacks, the opposition fullbacks, to come out, to engage our wide men, to create spaces so then that we can slip intricate passes through gaps so that players can get in. So early on, I'd be encouraging it. But then, like you said, with the chance Conor Howlin got, that's from good play that, we kept the ball alive, kept it moving. Callum Robinson does well, pulls it back, it comes across. Like Conor, I don't need to sit here and say Conor knows he needs to score. I think that's kind of quite obvious. But I think it's a kind of case of that. Like, that's why a lot of teams, when they say when you start off a game, put the ball in behind them, get the defenders running back. Why? Because the defenders will then drop 5-10 yards deeper, and that's when gaps start to appear between defence and midfield, where your intricate players, your number 10s, like for us last night, it was David McGoldrick who was dropping in, getting on the ball, getting on the half turn, linking the play really well. So that's kind of like, if we can find the balance of it, rather than just let's get the ball wide and get in the box and everyone pile in.
Are we being too positive about the result, about the performance last night? And like, I asked that on the basis that people are talking about us having a go, pressing obviously onto Slovakia. Like, I don't know, looking at the game last night, was that us being positive on the front foot, pushing them on early on, or was that Slovakia saying, like you mentioned earlier on, we're just going to sit back here, a couple of banks of four, we're going to draw you onto us and we're going to try and catch you on the break? Which was it?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I think there were a lot of positives from the game in the performance. I think certain individuals had, excellent games. Of course, look, Slovakia were missing some key players. They obviously had a game plan to sit in. If you looked at the main chances they kind of created was on the stroke of half time, the first half, and we have a corner, it breaks, and then they counter-attack at excellent speed, which we know that they're going to do. And then Duda has I think it was a comfortable enough save for the keeper of Darren Roloff's quality. I think he'd be very, very disappointed if that went in. Second half, you look at the clear chance the boy has Ralan, I believe it is. I apologise if he's listening for the pronunciation, but that came from a touch of world-class football from Maria Kamsik. That pass is exceptional. But besides that, they did sit deep. They tried to counter-attack us. It's then up to us to break them down, where in the past we've probably, I've certainly played in games where we've been a lot deeper, if you look at the Wales game, and then we struck teams on the counter-attack. So there are positives to take from it. But the hardest thing of this is the positives that we take. We go into another game on Sunday against Wales, and we have to see the same performance and the same, players still have to go about it. like, look, Stephen Kenny's got a tough decision to make on what he's going to do with the starting 11. A lot of lads played a lot of, minutes last night. There'll be, some sore legs and tired bodies this morning. So he's a big call on that, but it's still got to be the same fundamentals of getting on the ball, trying to knock it about and creating those chances. And then we have to, in order for last night to be a very positive performance and to take a lot out of it, regardless of the result, is we've got to put in a performance against Wales.
Yeah, it's a good point, all right. And I don't know if the two lads that were out last night are back in or not. He was asked the question last night and he didn't actually answer it directly, so I'm not sure if that's the case or not. You mentioned Alan Browne a bit earlier on, David, and like the impact that he had. I think he got about an hour in the end last night when he came off the bench, including the extra time, and had a very positive impact. He's not somebody that has actually really tended to start with any great regularity for Ireland. Had an impact last night. Is he somebody that you think fits into that system, and somebody, like, was it a case that he comes on and he's fresh where a lot of the other lads have obviously a bit of time under the belt, or is he a starting option for Ireland?
Oh, I think look, all that was missing from his performance last night and the time he played was a goal. I thought he was excellent when he came on. I think he was very unfortunate to miss the penalty. Look, those things happen. But in a sense that when he came on, he was a driving force of, you could see a real desire from him to try and get into the box. Like, he had 3 chances in the end. Obviously, like I said, the ball that comes across from Enda Stevens, if you looked at the link up and the hold up play from David McGoldrick, like, even if you start there, we've probably in the past been inclined to when that ball goes into the striker, we're setting it back to a full-back to leave the rest of the team. Whereas Dave McGoldrick held on to it and, twisted and turned, links up with Enda Stevens, who's bursting forward from full-back plays in Alan Browne. On another night, he probably, looking back, and he probably thinks his first touch could have been slightly better to, get the ball out of his feet to shoot. But then again, he's making that bursting run from midfield. And of course, I touched on the 1-2 between Callum and Robbie where the ball gets pulled across. But he's certainly a midfield player. I think he's done it, for a majority of his career at Preston, where he's one that wants to get forward and get in and around the box. He has scored a lot of goals for Preston. So he's definitely another option for Stephen Kenny. For him, it's probably I'm even racking my brains here, going back where we've had a midfielder who scored a lot of goals. Alan Browne certainly looks like he has the attributes to do that, because he was getting forward really well last night. And he was getting into the key areas. It's just on another night you're hoping that he's going to take 1 or 2 of those chances. Yeah.
All right, we're going to be joined on the line in just a moment by Gary Breen. First of all, Stephen Kenny and Shane Duffy speaking after the game last night.
They really showed, great qualities as men and, as Irishmen. And I think they showed themselves to be a real team. There was a tremendous team ethic. I think everyone done as much as they could. As the game progressed, I felt we were in the ascendancy, and we looked like we really wanted to win it, and we had some good chances. We just couldn't score that goal that we needed. Right at the end of the game as well, a couple of times, and in extra time. So very, very unfortunate. Very harsh way to lose in extra time, but that's the way it goes.
Disappointing. Obviously, we created chances, and it just wasn't our night. It didn't drop for us, and it was one of them where it went the whole way, and both teams sort of cancelled each other out in the end. So the luck of the draw. So hard one to take at the minute. It's heartbreaking and obviously very disappointing.
Yeah, some of the reaction after the game last night. We're going to be joined on the line by Gary Breen alongside David in just a couple of moments' time. Some comments coming into us. Greatest goals on YouTube says Hourihan missed the best chance of the night, but overall positive indications that the ethos of the team is moving in the right direction. Our players looked fitter and stronger at the end, but obviously the result remains the same. Putting in a performance is not good enough anymore. Threw away the game in front of goal. Hourihan's miss was awful, says Lenny there on YouTube as well. Conor Joyce not happy with the reason that Connolly and Ida missed out last night, and there's plenty of comments coming in that direction as well. Shocking in front of goal. Can't buy a goal since Robbie Keane retired, and it's a results world. Not to be a better team on the day and lose. We'd need to lose that mentality, says Katie Daly on YouTube there as well. So that's where we're at. You are watching OTB AM. We're live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 8:38 on this Friday morning, and we've been speaking to David Meyler. I'm delighted to say Gary Breen now joins us on the line as well. Good morning to you, Gary.
Good morning.
Are you feeling the love this morning, or what's your general reaction after that game last night?
Really one of regret more than anything. That's a crushing emotion, because I know about losing a penalty shootout. Of course, that's the overriding memory, but more so in terms of the chances we created, we didn't take, but also the fact that Slovakia, I didn't think we're a great team. I thought we were the better team comfortably throughout that game. I'm watching this as an away performance thinking, we're going to get this, we're going to get the goal, and I didn't see that they were ever really going to threaten us. I know they had a couple of chances, but even the way Slovakia play, no real penetration until the centre forward comes on late, always playing sideways passing, and I felt the setup of our team was good. I thought that Stephen Kenny's obviously had a long time to formulate the plan in his mind, but very little time to coach it. But nevertheless, the way the team set up, the way we played with 2 holding midfielders, as opposed to a 4-3-3, how he normally sets up Stephen Kenny, I felt suited us. I thought he gave us control in the game. I thought he gave us an opportunity to exploit the fact that Slovakia played with a kind of a cheating system where they'll leave midfielders up, hoping to punish you. But on the turnover, if you worked it well enough, we could get Jeff into good positions in that advanced midfield role. And I felt we did that at times. But I agree with you with what obviously David said there and Eoin earlier. I just feel that as good as we played, I really feel it's a missed opportunity. I genuinely do think that.
Gary, you say that we were much better than them last night, but when you look back at the quality of chances created, Slovakia had 2 amazing opportunities to go 2-0 up, basically. Let's face it. How big a concern is that what we are doing going forward seems to be leaving us quite exposed at the back?
Well, listen, it's a massive concern, of course it is. But a lot of the talk, certainly in those first 2 games, was centred around Shane Duffy in that high line. But there was an example in the game last night where we had our fullbacks in advance. I think it was around about the 68th minute, something like that. And the forward spins down into the right-hand channel, drags Shane out wide, and he comfortably deals with it. So I have no issue in terms of that. But listen, Eoin, I think it's disappointing if you give up those chances. And if you think about it, a couple of those big chances came from our own corners. That would be frustrating, that your defenders go up to attack the corner and the setup behind them looks so vulnerable. Certainly, James McLean does a brilliant tackle in the first 2 minutes to stop them scoring. So that would be a concern. And obviously then Darren's save a minute before half-time, likewise, from a breakaway corner. So, yeah, listen, that is a concern. But I am mindful, and I keep repeating this, that this is a work in progress. This was never going to go from where we were to where we hope to get in such a short space of time. So the only, as I said to you there, the crushing emotion of regret is the fact that what we've lost there, an opportunity to play in a major finals at home, that's a unique experience. People talk about once in a lifetime. It's probably never, ever going to come around again. And we've had brilliant occasions where obviously the football team plays at Croke Park and an opportunity to showcase our historic stadium there to the world. But to have a major championships at home, that's why it's going to hurt, and I think it will stay with them for the rest of their careers.
I'm kind of, or at least I was sick of talking about the possible formation that Stephen Kenny would play before he became manager, considering we had the Coleman versus Doherty debate. But I just wonder if last night is further evidence of why this potentially should be tried out, given how good Matt Doherty was as almost an inverted winger, as you say, around the 68th minute, him getting forward, but also how exposed he sometimes looks when he is making those runs forward and has so much going in behind him as well. It just feels a little bit unfair on Matt Doherty that he is so exceptionally good going forward that we wouldn't try out something new for him. That surely he deserves that opportunity, that one of our best wing backs that we've produced in recent times gets the chance to play in a back 5. I thought the evidence of that mounted even higher after last night.
Yeah, but we don't play a wing-back system, do we? I mean, it's just... This is what I have been impressed with Stephen Kenny in terms of his leadership, in terms of that strength of character as a manager, big decisions, initially to make sure that the time frame of his appointment was upheld, that the fact that he made that big decision with Seamus against Matt, the fact that he doesn't just pick people who are doing well in the Premiership, as likes of like Overfemi, like those type of guys. Massive debate.
Yeah,
his first tenure had Gary Kelly.
Line just breaking up a small bit there. Gary, we'll get that sorted and we'll get back to you. We'll just see if we can get that sorted. Gary's line just breaking up there slightly, and I think we still have David on the line. If we have, we'll put that point to you, David, just about No, we don't. So we'll come back to that in just a few minutes' time. We've loads of comments coming in, though, so I want to bring you those at coming up to 8:45 on this Friday morning, including this one from Paul Lillis on Twitter. Says, Ireland played well. Time now for Kenny to put his own stamp on Ireland, the Ireland team. Kevin Doyle was right last night, and we should all listen to what he said. By not talking about the negatives, let's be positive with this team and keep the faith. Just be positive on all these negative vibes that you're sending out.
Like obviously the only way to get better is to not just focus on the positives, and like that's not something Stephen Kenny is going to do. And I kind of feel almost guilty of myself that I'm now being drawn to this conversation about a three at the back again. I genuinely, I promise you, I was sick of this conversation. I was like, well, he is never going to play this. There is not a chance. It will always be Coleman or Doherty. And then last week, Doherty says, why can't we play in the same team? I think we should be able to play in the same team. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. But then after last night, I thought, surely we have enough evidence on our plate now that maybe Stephen Kenny starts to change what he's done in his whole career to accommodate this. Like it is like a special circumstance, because he does look exposed sometimes when the ball goes in behind him, Matt Doherty. But on the flip side, how good did he look cutting in those moments after 65, 70 minutes yesterday? How good did Enda Stevens look doing the same on the other flank? And I think moving to this, I'm kind of reluctant to say that this is about protecting Matt Doherty in terms of going back. It's not really about that at all. I'm kind of more drawn to this conversation this morning because of the positives of Matt Doherty last night going forward, and how maybe if we don't have the number 10 or the unlocking midfields that some other top-class international sides have, at least we've got an absolute top-class right-wing back to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I apologise to everyone who was sick of that conversation. I was.
Well, we're going to continue it on. Well, let's not stop there. The lads are back. And Gary, to just follow on to that point, is it a case of... We had Gary Neville at a roadshow last week, and he was saying, not a guy, obviously, who knows Ireland inside out, but knows Matt Doherty, knows what he brings to the game, knows Seamus Coleman, and knows what he brings to the game. And he was making the point, just put the two of them in. Is it as simple as that, or are we... is it far more complicated thing? When fit, of course.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think it's that simple. I generally don't think you just can shoehorn players into a system. If Stephen Kenny wants to adopt the three at the back, five at the back, whatever you want to call it, then yeah, and I'm sure that they'd work on it on the training ground. But I've said this before, and I don't know if it cut out. Mick McCarthy's first tenure had a scenario where he had Gary Kelly, Steve Finn and Stephen Carr, all, in my opinion, top-class right-backs. And as a manager, you have to make tough decisions, and he's made one. So I don't really see that. It's just one of those things. You'd love that it was a player of his quality, certainly in terms of what he's doing in the Premier League, Matt Doherty. But that's just the way it is. That is just the way it is.
What do you think, David? Change the system to suit one of our more talented players, or stick with the thing that he clearly believes is the right thing to do, Stephen Kenny?
No, I think he's got his philosophy of 4-3-3, whether that be the two holding midfielders or one holding midfielder. I don't think he can really change to a three at the back. Like, almost he's just into the job. He's working on, getting his philosophy across, and now to go and suddenly change the five at the back, to then suddenly go three midfield and two up front. So you're looking at who misses out up front in order to fit Seamus and Matt in. It's just there's too many. He doesn't have enough time to get that across, and it's something he's not done before, I believe. I don't know, has he done it, experimented it in his time as a manager before, but to suddenly come in and try and accommodate the audience to get those two players in, it's too difficult thing to do. Look, at the moment, it seems like, of course, Seamus picked up the injury before this international, but it seems that Matt is ahead of him, and it's up to Seamus now to put in performances to make Stephen put him in the team.
Yeah, and you're right on that. It's very unlikely that he is going to change. I just wondered, do you share some of the same frustrations that I would have about seeing Matt Doherty being so good going forward last night, and knowing what that means for the defence a little bit? Like, is there any... how impressed were you with, say, Ireland in midfield last night defensively? Because that was certainly one of the question marks in the first couple of games about the protection that Egan and Duffy were getting. It did seem a lot better last night. It did seem that we can afford to allow our fullbacks to push on.
Is that for me, Owen?
Can I put that one to David? Sorry, just to follow up on what you were just saying.
No. Okay. No, I definitely think, like, if you look at the chances that Slovakia created, like as Gary touched on, it was our set pieces at times where they were breaking and they were getting down the other side of the pitch. Of course, once, I would say after the opening 20 minutes, they, started to get a grip of Hamsik and probably stopped him playing them intricate passes through the lines. it was only late on when he gets on the ball, gets on the half turn, he puts an incredible pass through. Like, look, the midfielders were a lot more in the game. I think they had a lot more control. They asserted their, force into the game where they were able to keep it. But when they were turning over possession, they kept hold of the ball, which is a massive thing. We've always seen, players, I was probably guilty of it too. We're turning over possession after working so hard to win it back. But last night, they had their influence in the game where they kept control of the ball. Gary touched on Jeff. Hendrick was picking up good positions. Even when James McCarthy went off and Jeff, dropped deeper, he got more involved in the game. And then that left Alan Browne get further, forward, which inevitably got him into the box to get those chances. So it's definitely a lot of positives to take from midfield. And if you look on the basis of the chances that Slovakia created, there was none where we were cut apart as to when you look back at the Finland game, where at times we were all over the place. So certain improvements like from the positioning of players, and it's something obviously Stephen will have looked at in between, the times between the games, and it definitely looked rectified last night where we did stop, Slovakia coming through the middle of us.
The Coleman debate notwithstanding, because who the hell knows what happens with that over the next while, or how it impacts on the shape of the team. But what, looking at that team last night, is it how far away from a full starting 11 is it? Or the two lads that missed out last night, Gary, you can take this one on, David, come in afterwards. The two lads who missed out last night come straight in, or, obviously some players put their hands up in a big way last night, including David McGoldrick, obviously.
Oh, listen, David McGoldrick was exceptional. I thought he really was. And it was interesting in the build-up to the game that Stephen Kenny has said that he gets players in, and he does, because he drops into that 10 position, gets on the half-turn, makes passes, enables your wide strikers then to really get in. And I felt that I agree with you in terms of if Aaron Connolly's playing there in those wide striker positions, as soon as Dave McGoldrick goes in deep into 10, that's the trigger then for them guys to attack from out to in. And I thought James McLean, certainly in that opening 30 minutes, we saw everything what he's about in terms of how many times, I think four times he forced turnovers and got us on the break again. But I just remember there was just one incident where, do you remember Callum Robertson crosses the ball on the volley, and you're just looking at James McLean and his natural instinct as a wide man, as opposed to a centre forward, is not to attack across that near post, and the chance would have been there for Aaron Connolly. Listen, we're speculating, but I immediately thought that's the difference there in terms of what he will give you going forward as such. But I think there is options there. I think a lot of players have put their hands up, as you quite rightly said, to say that they want to be involved. And I do think that the setup last night helped us, certainly defensively. If you're thinking why we look more solid, it was the very fact that we had two number sixes. And David will tell you this in terms of his role as a midfielder. It's literally impossible to cover the whole width of the pitch on your own. You do need someone back in there. And I don't think that Conor Horan particularly defensive-minded, but I just think that starting position enables you to collect players more than having to react and read the game better. So that did help us. There's no doubt about it. And certainly the centre-halves were better for it. But in terms of how well they played, Duffy and Egan, at times, certainly at centre-back, when you haven't got a centre-forward to actually mark, it seems like it's easy, but it can be very difficult in terms of your concentration levels. I thought they were very good in terms of stepping in at times. And I think at times you've got to worry about the quality that Hamsik has on those passes when he gets his head up. But I thought they coped really well, the two centre-backs.
Yeah, could we get, if David, if and when Ida comes back, I'm not sure what the story is for the weekend, but can we get him and McGoldrick on the pitch at the same time? Gary talks about McGoldrick in that sort of 10 role, where blindingly, the first point about the Republic of Ireland over the last couple of years has always been that we can't score goals. And so I don't know, like Adam Eady can obviously score a goal or two. He's got a lot of the McGoldrick attributes going as well. So how does that stack up? Or what's your sense of on that question about what the actual Ireland starting 11 is when everybody's fit?
I would say the starting 11 for Ireland when everybody's fit would be just Connolly will replace James McLean. I think that's the way Stephen is going to go. I think it's pretty much set in stone. I think the back five won't change. I think the midfield three is kind of played themselves. Look, we saw obviously James went off last night with a knock. I hope he's okay and he's fit and available for the Wales game. Whether or not Aaron, I don't know the circumstances behind that, but I definitely think he'll come in. I think you could almost tell when Stephen was talking before and after that he was annoyed this has happened, that he's not available for the game, because of course he's a big loss. But it's almost as if can what I would like to see, which would be something a little bit different, is if he's going to play the 2 6s, which is fine, and I would maybe like to see Dave McGoldrick play as a 10 and then maybe play Adam Ida up front, because Dave McGoldrick does some fantastic work of dropping in, linking the play, getting hold of the ball. But when he turns and, you know, looks to play forward, it's almost as if he's looking for himself to be ahead of the ball. He's trying to create for himself. And I think if we could get, like as Gary said, if you can get someone like, you know, Aaron Connolly, who's making them penetrating runs in behind, Dave McGoldrick has the ability to not only get hold of it, get turned, go by someone, but then he can slip those passes. And if we can get those wingers running in between centre-halves and full-backs, just causing problems, it will then, like, there will be chances created. It's just that, does he look at maybe Dave McGoldrick as that outright 10? In the past, we've seen someone like Wes Hoolahan doing it. It's can we get him there and then maybe have a front 3 ahead of McGoldrick that he then can create for those players?
Go on,
Gary.
Adrian. Starting as a number 10, and David will tell you this, starting as a number 10 and then being a number 9 who drops into 10 are totally different. Because if I think about marking McGoldrick as a centre-half and he's a centre-forward, that's the decision problems that I have, that he'll drop deep, he'll ask questions, he'll make me go in, which then creates a space for those outside strikers to attack. And also, if he does that, the confusion that I have with David in front of me as a holding midfielder is I've got to get that information to, because David having to look over his shoulder for him. If he starts at 10 in that traditional role, then he's really in front of David. He can cope with him as that holding midfielder. I can see what's happening. He's not really influencing it. So I hear the point. I think he's brilliant when he goes into the 10 position, but I don't see him starting there because I think it really negates his skill set.
But it's almost what I'm looking for, though, is the way he comes in and manoeuvres the ball. I get it. I completely understand what you're saying. But it's like, because if he's coming from striker and he drops into midfield, you create an overload, because if we're matched up 3 for 3, then someone, we've seen at times last night, Alan Browne bursting forward, it creates that problem. But it's almost as if, can we get, what I'm looking for is more bodies ahead of the ball that he can, you know, play. It is, look, it's a catch-22, because do you then take away from what David McGoldrick is very good at? I get that. It's just, can we find, what I'm looking for is, can we find someone who can get in between the lanes consistently and get creating?
Yeah, I think you can do that. I totally agree with that. I think that is absolutely paramount to how we want to play. And you're right in terms of, as soon as he drops in, that's a trigger then for our advanced midfielders, whether or not it's Browne, Hendricks, to go. And also, when he drops into 10, which people don't realise is that he's so good at holding on to the ball that he then allows your fullbacks to comfortably get high in advanced positions and be able to affect the game high up. But that is definitely the trigger for me as a centre-half. As soon as David goes into 10 as a centre-forward, dropping in there, I've got a massive decision to make at centre-half. If I go with him, the 2 wide guys, we're going to attack from out to in, and then they're going to get in for the space that's created. If I don't go with him, he gets on the half turn, he links, he plays, he starts to play off. I think he's key to us being in that 10 position, but I think he has to start from centre forward to get into there, as opposed to just sitting in there and being picked up easily.
Well, I think going back to the one you said is the one late on the second half, for Alan Browne's first good chance was him coming in. It was not only he got hold of it, but he manoeuvred it 3 or 4 times turning. Brilliant. Plays it wide to Enda Stevens. Like, that's what I'm kind of saying. If we had him there, it's, look, I see both sides of the fence. I'm looking at different alternatives. But then, like, as you said, Alan Browne makes the bursting run. It's good striker. It's good hold-up play. You link players. And
do you know on that, David, on the chance that Connor has, that's such brilliant play from us as a team. It's everything that you want to, if you were to do a coaching course and saying what you want to do, your centre-half Duffy, that people say he can't pass, he can pass, steps into midfield, brilliant pass into McGoldrick, gets on a half turn in that 10 area, shows a bit of skill, drives forward, gets the edge of the box. And then suddenly we see the composure of, like, Callum Robinson, then Browne in the box, where you're thinking normally in a situation your eyes light up, don't they, and you panic and you force a shot. But they didn't. They had that composure, made a couple of passes, and the ball goes to Connor, and you're thinking, well, listen, certain goal. And obviously it wasn't a great strike, but that there is the perfect example of what that team can do when it's set up like that.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah, so, like, what we're saying here is that asking a McGoldrick to play a slightly different role than he's normally used to, maybe coming a small bit deeper, like is there a possibility? So we're talking about a role there that we don't have a player for, and so we're trying to ask somebody to slightly adapt to fit into that to bring out the best. But is there to back to the original question about could you just, and it sounds like David you're saying you could, and maybe Gary you're saying you're not, but could you bring McGoldrick a little bit deeper and put an Ida type or somebody like to have somebody there outside of just the wingers coming in, but to have somebody there who you're saying you are our out and out striker and we need you to fill that role, and McGoldrick will sit deeper and you feed off him. Is that a possibility or is that la la land?
Well, no, listen, it's a possibility, and as obviously what David said, it's so difficult in terms of the time frame you have to coach players. But I think what we have seen in the short tenure of Stephen Kenny is that these players are getting the information. They are getting, there's no grey areas. They know their roles. They know their teammates' role. It's just getting on the pitch to really nail it down. But I think, listen, you can do it. But as I said, you just have to coach it. But I don't know, I do think it changes the dynamic. And if you think about Stephen Kenny, certainly under 21s, where Adam Ida was his go-to man as a centre forward, he's been quite vocal about this. He wants his centre forward to stretch the pitch, to play on centre-half shoulders, because then what that does is it makes your opposition drop deeper. But in doing so, then it kind of changes the dynamic of your two wide players, because ultimately then you're looking to them to exploit the space in the pockets inside and link up there. And that's how you get good distances between your team. So the dynamic will change if Adam Ida does play centre forward. I think it does slightly change the dynamic of whether or not you want centre forwards in those wide areas or whether you want playmakers who step in like O'Dowda, Brady, those type of guys who could play in the pocket. So listen, there's a lot of options there, which at times we said there wasn't, but listen, it's going to hurt and it will continue to hurt. But I hope that it's used as a motivational tool, because if I look back on my career, it certainly was for us in terms of conceding that stupid, ridiculous goal against Macedonia last minute from a corner, which denied us winning the group. We then go out in the playoffs. But it just really fuels your fire even more so, because you're thinking, we are good enough. We just got to make it happen. And we managed to do that in our next campaign. I hope that this group of lads are thinking like that.
Who do you see as the most like-for-like replacement for David McGoldrick? I mean, he's 32 years old at this point. I mean, his international career is not going to last forever. It just seems from the way you guys are talking, he is pivotal to how Stephen Kenny wants to play. Who do you see as that next man up, Gary?
Well, I wouldn't listen, Owen. I know that 32, but 32 in modern day football is very different. You can be a very fit and strong 32, and I think he looks it. So I wouldn't be looking to move him on just yet. I know what you're saying, but I think we've got to be careful to try and about running before we can, like walking or whatever, run before you can walk as such. Listen, let's just take stock of what we've got right now as opposed to what could potentially happen in the next 2 years. I think David McGoldrick will certainly be there for us for the next couple of campaigns.
Okay, so we're all. I've started off a little bit sort of pessimistic this morning, lads, but you've talked me right round. I'm buzzing now for Sunday. But yeah, look at onwards and upwards. David, Gary, thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Good luck.
And Gary Breen on the line there, picking through the bones of last night's game. And there are loads of reasons to be positive.